This happened a few months ago, but the aftermath has only just started to settle, and my social life may never recover. I'm a 29-year-old guy working in IT for a mid-sized marketing firm. Think open office, too many Slack channels, casual Fridays that are just jeans and overpriced sneakers. Our department is mostly invisible unless the Wi-Fi breaks, and I like it that way. Until this all went down, my life was pretty low-key. Then came her. Let's call her Maya. She joined the design department as a freelancer, working mostly remote but occasionally popping in for meetings. The first time I saw her, she was in the break room struggling to work the espresso machine. I helped her out, we talked, we vibed. She was funny, sarcastic, and had this really sharp, artsy energy. We kept bumping into each other, then moved to chatting on Teams, where we started with work stuff and ended with memes and inside jokes. Fast forward a couple weeks, and she invites me to a gallery opening she's contributing to. I show up thinking it's gonna be this pretentious thing, but it's actually really cool. We grab drinks after. The chemistry is undeniable. That night ends in her apartment, and the next several weeks become a whirlwind of amazing dates, deep conversations, lazy Sunday mornings, and just this electric connection. I hadn't felt this way about someone in years. Now, here's the thing. Maya told me early on she was technically in the middle of a separation, but they were living totally separate lives and the paperwork was basically done. She said she didn't want to talk about her ex much, and I didn't push. I figured, hey, people have pasts. The important thing is the now, right? God, I was so stupid. One Friday, I'm in the office a bit later than usual finishing a server migration. Most people are gone except a couple execs having some kind of late meeting in the glass-walled conference room. As I'm leaving, I glance in and my stomach drops. There, sitting at the table, is Maya. Next to her, gesturing animatedly, is Greg, our head of strategy and one of the founding partners of the company. Also, my boss's boss. I stand there like a dumbass, half hidden by a fake plant, watching them. They're not arguing. They're not discussing design strategy. They're laughing. She touches his arm. He leans in close. My chest tightens and I leave in a haze, head spinning. I message her that night, casual, hey, were you at the office today? She replies, yeah, had a weird meeting with my ex, long story. Drinks soon? Wait. Her ex. I check our internal directory. Full name, Gregory Langston. I do a full-blown cyberstalk. LinkedIn, Facebook, the company gala photos. There they are, arm in arm in a charity event pic from 2 years ago. Wedding ring sparkling. My heart pounds. I confront her. She admits it. Yes, Greg is her husband. Not ex. Not separated. Husband. She insists it's been emotionally over for over a year and the divorce is dragging because of some shared property. She says Greg's moved on, that he knows she's dating. I say, does he know who you're dating? Her face goes blank. Turns out, no. No, he did not. I spend the weekend spiraling. I feel used. I feel like a walking HR violation. Monday rolls around and Greg calls me into a meeting. I've never had a meeting with him before. I consider quitting on the spot. The meeting is polite. He's wearing his usual smug smile, calm and condescending. He thanks me for my discretion and says he assumes Maya has explained the situation. Then he drops this gem, I'd appreciate if, for the sake of the office dynamic, this didn't become a distraction. Like I'm the distraction. The following weeks are a slow-motion social implosion. Maya starts coming into the office more. People start noticing our awkward body language. Rumors bubble. The design team starts avoiding me. My own manager starts acting cagey around me, not CCing me on projects I was supposed to lead. Then Maya breaks it off, says it's too complicated, that she can't risk her divorce negotiations. I'm heartbroken, humiliated, and now essentially radioactive at work. Greg never says a word, but his shadow is everywhere. I start getting terrible assignments, legacy systems, ghost projects, anything to keep me out of sight. The worst part? She wasn't lying about the separation. 3 weeks later, Greg posts an Instagram picture with a younger woman, clearly already dating. Maya likes the photo. Comments with a heart emoji. I eventually transfer to a different office in another city within the same company, because starting over was easier than navigating that minefield. My new manager is cool, the projects are better, and I'm slowly piecing together my confidence again. But every time I get a Slack notification from someone in the old office, I flinch a little. Lesson learned: if someone says they're separated, ask separated from whom. And maybe don't date anyone in the creative department. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. So this happened last weekend and I'm only now finding the strength to relive it. I, 31M, got married to my partner of 7 years, Lily, 29F, in what was supposed to be a modest but beautiful outdoor wedding in the countryside, with close friends and family. We planned everything meticulously for months. The seating chart, the color scheme, the playlist, which Lily obsessed over for weeks, even the porta potties were strategically placed to be discreet yet accessible. Now, I come from a very DIY, penny-pinching family. My dad is the king of I can do that for free, and honestly, a lot of the time he can do stuff decently enough that people let him. He built our childhood treehouse, repaired our cars, and once even installed a full kitchen in his buddy's cabin with zero prior experience. So when it came to the wedding, my dad begged, to be in charge of the cake. Let me repeat, the wedding cake. Now, Lily is a bit of a foodie. She loves baking shows, follows like 50 cake artists on Instagram, and for her, the cake was second only to, us actually getting married. We had initially chosen this amazing local bakery that specialized in intricate designs and wild flavors, but when my dad heard we were spending nearly $600 on it, he was outraged. $600? For a pile of flour and sugar, he scoffed. I could make a better cake blindfolded with one hand. I should have said no. I knew I should have. But he was so enthusiastic. He said he'd been taking cake decorating classes, I still don't know if this is true or some YouTube rabbit hole, and even bought new gear just for the occasion. Against my better judgment, and despite Lily's visible discomfort, I caved. I said, all right, Dad, you can make the wedding cake. Lily made me promise that if it looked bad, we'd just smile, say thank you, and have a backup sheet cake from Costco. I agreed. I didn't expect to need that backup. Oh, sweet naive past me. Fast forward to the day of the wedding. Everything is going surprisingly smoothly. The ceremony was beautiful, our vows were tear-jerkers, and the food was genuinely excellent. People were laughing, dancing, taking pictures. Lily looked like an actual goddess. I was on top of the world. Then my dad pulls up in his truck and calls me over. Hey champ, give me a hand with this masterpiece. I walk over, expecting maybe a decently done tiered cake, nothing too fancy. What I saw was... I don't even know how to describe it. The cake was somehow leaning even though it was only 2 tiers. The frosting was this violently bright turquoise color, uneven and aggressively textured. I could see lumps under the fondant like it had acne. And perched on top was what I can only assume was a handmade bride and groom topper that looked like a Play-Doh nightmare. The groom had no neck, and the bride looked like she'd seen things. Terrible things. Dad, I whispered. What is this? He beamed. Art. I call it love is beautifully imperfect. I honestly thought he was joking. But no, he was deadly serious. I tried to politely ask if we could maybe keep it in the back, display it symbolically, and serve the Costco cake, but my dad looked so hurt. I put my soul into this, he said. If it doesn't go out there, I'll leave. So the cursed cake made its public debut. The guests were polite but confused. Lily looked like she wanted to evaporate. I tried to make light of it, joking that it was a creative reinterpretation of tradition. People laughed awkwardly. Then it got worse. It turns out my dad had tried to experiment with the flavors. The bottom tier was chocolate orange rum. That's fine if you like alcohol-drenched citrus fudge, but he forgot to tell anyone it was soaked. I mean drenched. One of the flower girls, my 12-year-old cousin, took a bite and immediately asked if she was drunk. The second tier was worse, pistachio lavender. With chunks of actual lavender. It tasted like soap and tree bark. People were spitting it into napkins discreetly. The topper fell off and landed in the punch bowl like a tiny Titanic. At one point, Lily's maid of honor tried to take a photo with the cake and the entire top tier slid off like a melting iceberg. Splat. Right on the grass. My dad rushed in, scooped it up with a paper plate, and said, 5-second rule. Before trying to reattach it with frosting, Lily had to walk away. I followed her, apologizing profusely. She didn't cry, which made it so much worse. She just said, I want to go home. I want to eat leftover Thai and pretend this never happened. I spent the next hour doing damage control. My uncle tried to help by starting a chant of cake. Cake. Cake, to keep the mood light. I think half the guests thought it was a performance art piece. Someone made a TikTok with sad violin music over footage of the cake collapse. It has over 200,000 views now. The caption was *Love is beautifully imperfect, a tragedy in 2 tiers. Later that night, Lily finally laughed about it. A bitter, exhausted kind of laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. We cuddled on the couch in our wedding clothes, eating pad thai and watching Great British Bake Off like we were in mourning. We're still married, somehow. My dad apologized later and admitted he may have gotten a little ambitious. He's now forbidden from contributing to any future major events unless it involves folding chairs or parking directions. But hey, at least nobody got food poisoning. TIFU by trying to prank my new girlfriend and almost getting arrested at a funeral. So this happened about 2 months ago and it's taken me this long to mentally process what the hell I did. For context, I, 27 am a bit of a prankster. Not the pie in the face or TikTok type pranks, but the dry, situational, long con kind of humor. My friends and family are used to it. My new girlfriend, Jess, 26F, was not. We'd been dating for about 3 months at the time, still in that stage where everything is fresh and exciting and you're mostly on your best behavior. Jess is smart, sweet, has a dark sense of humor, and, this is important, is a funeral director. Yep, she works at a funeral home. She doesn't usually take her work home with her, but she did tell me early on that she was helping plan and officiate a private memorial for a family friend. It was something personal for her, and she was really stressed about it. She'd been working overtime on all the arrangements. Now here's where I messed up. I thought it would be funny, nay, brilliant, to pull off a harmless prank to lighten the mood around her stressful week. I decided I would attend the memorial service in disguise and act like a guy who thought he was at a different funeral. I imagined showing up looking distraught, crying over the wrong person, awkwardly giving a speech about a Roger instead of Edgar, and eventually revealing it was me all along. Hilarious, right? Oscar-worthy comedy. So the day comes. Jess had mentioned the funeral would be small, maybe 20 people, and it was happening at the funeral home she worked at. I timed it so I'd get there about 10 minutes after it started. I borrowed a cheap gray suit from my roommate and wore big sunglasses, a fake mustache, like, comically thick, and even stuffed a few tissues up my sleeve for dramatic effect. I looked like a cartoon version of someone in mourning. In my mind, I was Andy Kaufman. I walk in quietly and take a seat in the back. The room is dead silent except for the soft instrumental music playing. Everyone is seated. Jess is at the front, looking composed but exhausted. I feel a small pang of guilt but push it aside. I'm committed. A few people glance at me, confused, but no one says anything. I begin dabbing my eyes with a tissue. Then, 5 minutes in, I start quietly sobbing. Just little whimpers at first. People start glancing over. Then I go for it. I raise my hand and say, "Excuse me. I'd like to say a few words about Roger." There's a long silence. Jess blinks. "I'm sorry, who?" I stand, shuffle to the front, and begin this totally improvised monologue about how Roger was a gentle soul who loved boating and hated Mondays. A few chuckles from the crowd, nervous laughter, I assumed. I talk about our fishing trips, never happened, how he once saved a cat from a tree, complete fiction, and how he always called pizza flat spaghetti, what? At this point, I'm holding back a grin. Jess slowly stands up, walks over, and says, "Who are you?" Now, this is where I had planned to pull off the disguise and yell "It's me," like some demented Scooby-Doo villain, and everyone would laugh and realize it was a joke. Except I hadn't accounted for one critical thing: I was in the wrong room. See, Jess works at a funeral home with multiple viewing rooms. Her memorial service for Edgar was in room B. I had wandered into room A, where a real funeral was being held for an actual person named Richard, whom I'd somehow renamed Roger in my head. None of these people knew who I was. I had just walked in off the street, cried like a lunatic, and gave an unhinged eulogy for someone I never met. As I'm standing there at the podium with every eye on me, Jess bursts into the room from the hallway. Her face is a mix of panic and murder. She grabs my arm and hisses, "What the F*** are you doing?" The room erupts into chaos. A woman near the front starts crying harder. A man stands up and starts yelling, "Who the hell is this?" A teenager takes out his phone and starts recording. Jess drags me out by the elbow like a bouncer throwing out a drunk at 2 a.m. I try to explain, still in character, but she cuts me off with a whisper shout, "You absolute idiot. This is Richard's funeral. Edgar's is next door." I took off the fake mustache and tried to explain, but it was like trying to put out a fire with a teacup. Jess was livid. She told me to leave and not come back. I get home and spiral. I send like 15 apology texts. I call her 3 times. No answer. 3 hours later, I get a knock at my door. It's Jess, in her work clothes, looking absolutely drained. She tells me that Richard's family almost called the police but decided against it after Jess vouched for me and told them I was just deeply confused and on a new medication. She had to sit through the rest of the service knowing her boyfriend had just hijacked a funeral like a deranged improv actor. We sat on the couch and had the talk. I told her everything. She didn't say much. Just sat there, staring at me like I was a different species. Eventually, she said, "You can't prank me anymore. Ever. Ever again." Then she added, "And if you ever show up to my work in costume again, I'll kill you and prep your body myself." We somehow stayed together. 2 months later, we're still dating, and she's starting to laugh about it. Sort of. But the story has now reached her coworkers, her family, and apparently Richard's family too, because last week I got a handwritten letter from someone named Susan that just said, "Roger sounded like a great guy. Thanks for sharing." I still cringe when I think about it. But at least I'm banned from pranking for life. TIFU by agreeing to a last-minute escape room date with my boss's daughter. Okay. So this story takes place about 2 years ago, but it's burned into my memory like a red-hot brand of awkwardness. I, 29 am at the time, worked at a mid-sized marketing firm in Seattle. I was doing all right, grinding away, staying low-key, trying to climb the ladder without making waves. One day, my boss, let's call him Frank, pulled me aside after a client pitch and said his daughter was new in town and didn't know many people yet. "She's about your age," he said, smiling way too wide. "Smart girl. You guys might hit it off. You like puzzles, right?" Now, normally I'm not the type to get involved in this sort of matchmaking weirdness, especially when it involves my literal superior. But Frank had the sort of "I won't forget this" tone in his voice. So against my better judgment, I said sure, I'd hang out with her sometime. Low stakes, right? Her name was Lily. She messaged me that night, super friendly, actually funny, and within 10 minutes of chatting she suggested we do an escape room. Not a coffee. Not a drink. An escape room. A horror-themed one, no less. I don't do horror. I jump when toast pops. But again, I was in too deep. Backing out now would be weird, and Frank had already told the office I was taking Lily out. Whatever that meant. So Friday night rolls around and I meet her at the escape room place, which is in the basement of a rundown strip mall on the edge of town. She looks great, casually confident, and I immediately realize this is more than just a hangout. She's dressed like she's expecting dinner after. I'm dressed like I'm expecting a paintball match. The escape room host is this overly enthusiastic guy who looks like he hasn't slept in a week. He goes full in character as some sort of deranged scientist, shoving a clipboard into my hands and shouting, "Find the serum before time runs out or you'll rot from the inside." Cool. We get locked in the room, and it's immediately pitch black. Like, can't see your own hand black. Lily grabs my arm and laughs, like full-on grabs it, and I walk face-first into a wall. Off to a solid start. Then the lights flicker on and there's this horrifying animatronic body on the floor that starts screaming bloody murder. I jump. She laughs. I hit my head on a low-hanging pipe. Again, smooth. The room is gross in the way only a fake hospital-themed escape room can be. Blood-smeared walls. Rusted metal. Flickering fluorescent lights that give me an instant headache. Lily is thriving. She's darting around, solving puzzles, opening hidden compartments, and making confident guesses. Me? I get stuck trying to open a cabinet for like 5 minutes before she tells me it's already unlocked. Halfway through the game, things go sideways. One of the actors jumps out from a trapdoor dressed like a plague doctor and shouts something about time running out. Lily screams and grabs me again, and in my panic, I somehow elbow her in the face. Not hard, but enough. Her nose starts bleeding. She laughs it off at first, says it's fine, but it's definitely not fine. The actor panics and breaks character. Over the loudspeaker, someone says pause the game and the lights go up. They offer to stop the game, but Lily refuses, shoves tissues up her nose, and insists we continue. I'm mortified. I keep apologizing, but she brushes it off, saying she's had worse. So we push on. And here's where it goes from awkward to downright catastrophic. We get to the final puzzle. It's some complicated mechanism that requires syncing a heart monitor with a set of blinking lights using some sort of stethoscope. Lily's trying to listen to the fake heartbeat while I adjust dials. The actor doctor is back now, looming over us like some deranged Batman villain. We're sweating. The time is ticking down. And in a moment of desperation, I shout, "I think I got it." I did not have it. I twist the wrong dial and accidentally activate a secondary trapdoor that no one had mentioned. The floor beneath me literally opens and I drop about 4 feet into a foam pit full of fake bones and cobwebs. I land badly, sprain my ankle, and yell something very uncool like "Oh God, why?" Lily, to her credit, starts laughing so hard she's crying. Nosebleed still in full effect. I'm lying in a bone pit like a budget Indiana Jones, groaning in pain, while an awkward teenager in a lab coat tries to help me out with a broom handle. The room's timer hits 0. Siren sounds. "You failed," the loudspeaker says. They help me limp out. Lily's holding her nose, still laughing, saying it was the best worst date she's ever been on. I'm trying not to die from embarrassment or pain. The guy at the front desk gives us a 15% off coupon for next time, which I immediately throw in a trash can on the way out. I offer to drive Lily home despite my ankle, but she insists she's good. She hugs me, wipes a bit of blood on my shirt by accident, and says, "This was fun." You're weird, but in a good way. I go home, ice my ankle, and debate moving to a new city. Now here's the cherry on top. Monday morning, I walk into work, limping, looking like I lost a fight with a chainsaw. Frank is already in his office. I figure I'll sneak in and avoid eye contact for a solid week. Nope. Frank sees me and waves me in. He grins and goes, "So, how'd it go with Lily?" I freeze. "She had a great time," he says before I can answer. "Said you were hilarious. A little clumsy. But she liked that." I mumble something and try to back out of the room. Then he says, "You know, I think you'd make a great addition to the strategy team." I blink. Strategy team equals big promotion. "You're creative," he says. "Think on your feet. Or off your feet, I guess, from what I heard." That's how I found out Lily had told her dad everything. The bleeding nose. The fall. The foam pit. Apparently she framed the whole thing as a rom-com in real life. Frank thought it was adorable. So yeah. I accidentally injured my boss's daughter in a horror-themed escape room, embarrassed myself in 17 unique ways, and somehow ended up getting promoted. Life is weird. So this happened a couple months ago, but I'm still dealing with the social fallout, so it feels very current. For context, I, 25M, live in a very diverse city where hearing people speak multiple languages in a single conversation is normal. I speak English and a bit of high school level Spanish, but that's about it. Anyway, I matched with this girl on Hinge, let's call her Lena, 24F. She's German, moved here about a year ago for her master's program, and in her profile she wrote that she loves deep conversations in German or English. I swiped right because she was gorgeous and mentioned hiking, and I lied a little bit and put fluent in German in my bio right before matching, thinking it might spark something. Immediately, she messages me, "Oh, du sprichst Deutsch?" "Oui schon." I respond with Ja. Ich liebe die Sprache, which Google Translate assured me was a good move. She seemed excited and started writing in full German. I panicked and said something like, "Haha, I've been speaking mostly English lately so I'm a bit rusty, but I'd love to practice with you." She bought it. For the next few weeks, we texted mostly in English, with the occasional German word or phrase peppered in. I kept it vague. When she'd speak German, I'd say, "Oh yeah, that means, insert vague summary, right?" and she'd be impressed. I thought I was a genius. We went on 5 dates, everything was going great, and she never pushed the language thing too hard until the 6th date. We were at this cozy little bar when she suddenly got a call and stepped out. She came back looking upset, and told me her grandfather had passed away back in Munich. Naturally, I consoled her, offered support, etc. I didn't expect to see her again for a while, but 2 days later she texts me saying she's flying out in the morning and wants to see me that night. She tells me she really appreciated our connection and, get this, says her family would love to meet me while she's in Germany. I thought it was just a sweet sentiment, maybe something she said in grief. Nope. She sends me flight info. She actually booked me a ticket. Now, at this point, most rational people would have come clean and said, "Hey, I might have exaggerated the whole speaking German thing." But my idiot brain goes, how hard can it be to fake this for a weekend? So I thanked her, told her I'd be honored, and got on the plane. We land in Munich. Her parents pick us up. They're lovely, very German, and very not fluent in English. Lena is translating a lot at first, and I play the part of the quiet, grieving but respectful boyfriend. At one point her dad starts telling a story and Lena leans in and whispers, you don't need translation, right? And I smile and say, no, I got the gist. I did not get the gist. I caught maybe 2 words and laughed when they did. It worked. But then we got to the funeral. It's a traditional Bavarian service, emotional, quiet, very formal. I wore a suit that clearly made me look like I was part of the family. I sat beside Lena in the front pew. Her relatives kept nodding at me solemnly. One old man even shook my hand and said something that sounded really heartfelt. I just nodded slowly and said ja, with what I hoped was the correct amount of gravity. Then came the moment that torpedoed my existence. A woman, I later learned she was the deceased sister, gets up to speak, says a bunch of things in German, and then gestures toward me. People turn to look. Lena nudges me and whispers, my aunt just said you're the perfect person to say a few words since Opa loved you even though you didn't speak much, just like him. Isn't that sweet? You can just say a few words about love or whatever. My blood went cold. I walk up to the podium like I'm being led to a firing squad. I look out at these mourning Germans who believe I am both grieving and fluent. I try to think of the most neutral, safe German words I know, which at that moment amounted to Wasser, Buck, and Bratwurst. So I open my mouth and say, Liebe, und. Family, sind, sehr gut. Which means, love and family are very good. That was the extent of my speech. Silence. Not even respectful silence, confused silence. Then Lena laughs. Thank God. The others follow, thinking I must have been making a sweet joke. I bow my head like I just quoted Kant, and return to my seat. You'd think I'd learned my lesson, right? Wrong. Later that evening, Lena's dad pulls me aside with a beer and starts talking, clearly getting more comfortable with me. He's speaking fast, laughing, gesturing a lot. I am nodding like my life depends on it. And then he looks me straight in the eye and says something that ends with verheiratet. I recognize that word. It means married. I assume he's joking. I laugh and say ja, while raising my glass. He pauses, frowns a bit, then looks at Lena, then smiles. I find out the next day he thought I was proposing. Apparently I agreed to marry Lena in front of her entire family. Lena was glowing. I was panicking. I spent the rest of the trip trying to subtly walk back a fake engagement without revealing that I didn't understand a single word anyone had said the entire time. By the time we flew back, Lena started to sense something was up. She finally confronted me after we landed, asking why I'd been so quiet and weird the whole trip. So I came clean. I told her everything. That I lied in my bio. That I used Google Translate. That I was just trying to impress her and things spiraled out of control. She was silent for a while. Then she started laughing, like, wheezing, doubled over laughing. She couldn't believe I'd flown to Germany, attended a funeral, and gave a speech with a 5-word German vocabulary. She said it was the dumbest and most strangely sweet thing anyone's ever done and that her aunt had suspected something when I said love is very good. We're still kind of seeing each other, believe it or not. But now she makes me take Duolingo every day, and every time we have a fight she calls me her bratwurst. TIFU. Hard. This happened last weekend and I still feel like a human fire hazard. My girlfriend, let's call her Emily, and I have been dating for about a year and a half, and things are going great. She's smart, funny, and somehow thinks my awkwardness is charming. Her dad, on the other hand, is the embodiment of Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino but with a splash of Gordon Ramsay. He's a retired firefighter who now spends his time cooking elaborate meals and judging people who can't tell a béarnaise from a hollandaise. So when Emily told me her dad had invited me over for Sunday dinner, I knew this was more than a casual meal. It was a test. And my dumbass thought I'd be slick by volunteering to cook the main dish. I don't know why I did that. Some primal instinct kicked in. Some toxic mix of pride, testosterone, and 4 hours of binge-watching MasterChef. I said, how about I make dinner for everyone, before my brain could catch up and scream no. Emily blinked. You cook? I dabble, I said. Let me clarify. I dabble in microwave meals and have made exactly 2 successful pasta dishes that weren't just sadness noodles with ketchup. But now I was committed. Her dad looked intrigued. Sure. Let's see what you got. So I planned to make coq au vin. I figured French cuisine sounded impressive and gave me enough of a challenge to earn respect. I found a fancy-looking recipe online with words like deglaze and reduction that made me feel fancy by association. I spent Saturday night studying YouTube videos like I was cramming for the SATs. Sunday arrives. We get to her dad's house, a beautiful 2-story suburban home with a pristine kitchen that looked like it had never seen a misplaced crumb. Stainless steel everything. Granite counters. A pot rack that made me feel inferior as a man. I get started. I'm chopping onions, trying to look confident. Her dad watches me like a hawk. The guy has arms like fire hydrants and eyes that say, I've seen things burn. He doesn't say much, just grunts occasionally. Emily's off setting the table, blissfully unaware of my growing internal panic. Things go off the rails when I realize I forgot to bring pearl onions. These are apparently crucial to coq au vin. I improvise and use diced white onions. Crisis 1 averted. Then comes the wine. The recipe calls for a whole bottle of red wine. I open the one I bought and pour it in. Her dad, eyebrows raised, says, You sure about that? Absolutely, I lie. What I didn't realize is that I accidentally bought a sweet dessert wine instead of a dry red. I basically just made boozy chicken syrup. Still, I power through, hoping the flavor will magically fix itself. Now comes the part where you flambe the chicken. This is where things truly, irrevocably, spectacularly went wrong. I pour a little cognac into the pan to flambe. I've seen Gordon Ramsay do it. It looks badass. I light the match, touch it to the pan, and whoosh. A giant fireball erupts, like the pan just got possessed by the spirit of a dragon. I jump back, scream something unmanly, and knock over the bottle of cognac in the process, which spills directly into the open flame. Now the counter is on fire. Legit flames licking up the cabinets. Emily screams from the dining room. Her dad leaps into action like it's 1989 and he's back on the job. He grabs a fire extinguisher, because of course he has one mounted under the sink, and calmly sprays down the blaze like it's a backyard barbecue. Silence. Smoke is rising. The kitchen smells like charred poultry and panic. Her dad turns to me, black soot on his arms, and says, Well, you definitely cooked. I am mortified. I apologize about 42 times, offer to pay for damages, clean everything twice, and basically try to sink into the floor. Emily is somewhere between laughing and crying. Her dad, impressively calm, says he's just glad no one got hurt, but that I might want to stick to burgers next time. Dinner ends up being Chinese takeout. I spend the rest of the evening scraping burnt chicken off the stovetop while Emily's dad watches golf and mutters something about goddamn pyromaniacs. On the drive home, Emily turns to me and says, You know, he actually liked you more after the fire. I blink at her. Seriously? Yeah. He respects that you didn't cry or run out of the house. Plus, you took responsibility. That's big for him. So, in a weird, twisted way, setting the kitchen on fire might have actually worked in my favor? That doesn't mean I'm off the hook though. I'm now banned from cooking unsupervised in his home for eternity. And every time we visit, he calls me Guy Fieri's evil twin. I'll take it. This happened a few months ago and only just fully resolved itself last week, so now that I'm, mostly, clear of the fallout, I feel like I can share it. For context, I live alone in a third-floor apartment in a densely packed city. I work remotely in cybersecurity, so I'm not clueless about tech, but I am notoriously bad at fully reading instruction manuals and terms of use agreements. That'll become relevant. So around late last year, we had a rash of car break-ins and package thefts in the neighborhood. I caught some guy rifling through my downstairs neighbor's Amazon delivery from my window and yelled at him like a grumpy old man. He flipped me off and walked away like it was Tuesday. A few neighbors started talking about forming a neighborhood watch. Me, being the genius tech guy that I am, decided to go above and beyond by setting up some security cameras. Not just for myself, but as a sort of communal eye in the sky. This is where I spiraled into insanity. I bought 6 cheap but highly rated Wi-Fi security cameras off a sketchy site that seemed like a knockoff of AliExpress. The branding was just Gardy with a Weird Owl logo. I figured, whatever. Slapped them up on my windows facing the street, the back alley, and the parking lot. The Gardy app had a live stream mode, which I thought would be perfect. My plan was to run the stream on an old iPad and just keep an eye on the street, maybe even let a few trusted neighbors have access. That plan got derailed fast. I connected all 6 cameras to my network and set up the app, and boom, immediate access to all feeds, super smooth video. I was kind of impressed. Even the night vision worked great. The interface was clunky but functional. The cameras started recording automatically whenever they detected motion, and the app showed me dozens of clips within an hour. Pretty neat. Except, one night, while scrolling through the interface, I found a button labeled Enable Public Access. There was no explanation. No pop-up warning. Just a little switch and a smiley face emoji. I was half drunk and curious, and I thought maybe this would let me share a stream link with my neighbors. So I clicked it. It didn't seem to do anything at first. The app froze for a few seconds and then went back to normal. Whatever, right? Wrong. About a week later, I started noticing weird things. My bandwidth usage spiked like crazy. I got a warning from my ISP about excessive upstream traffic. Then someone slid a note under my door that said, "Love the live show," with a winking face drawn in red ink. I thought it was a prank. Then my landlord emailed me. Apparently, someone had contacted the leasing office, concerned that I had surveillance equipment broadcasting residential footage to the public. She was polite but firm, asking me to explain myself. I wrote back insisting that it was just security footage, nothing public, just for safety. I even invited her to stop by and look at the setup herself. She didn't. I would have left it at that if it weren't for the night I woke up at 3 a.m. to knocking on my door. It was the cops. Not just 1 or 2 officers. 4. Plus a guy in a gray hoodie holding a laptop and flashing a badge. I thought I was about to be raided for something I didn't even know I did. Turns out, the Enable Public Access button didn't just share my camera feed with my neighbors. It published a live stream of all 6 cameras to a publicly accessible directory on the Gardy website, a directory that was apparently popular with a niche online community that likes watching real-time urban surveillance. Not only that, but the footage was being auto-mirrored on a few different shady live stream sites, some of which were actively advertising it like watch live from this American city's crime-ridden streets. There were literally thousands of viewers. Thousands. And they weren't just passively watching. Some were chatting in real time, calling out when someone walked by with a suspicious package. Others were clipping parts of the stream and uploading them to Reddit and Twitter like they were episodes of a true crime show. One video had gone viral of a dude slipping on ice near my apartment. Another showed a couple making out in the alley behind my building. Someone had even created a drinking game based on how often a specific guy walked his 3-legged dog past my window. The guy in the hoodie was from a local cybercrime task force. He told me they'd been tracking the source of a high-traffic unauthorized surveillance stream for a few weeks and finally traced it back to my IP address. The main issue, they said, wasn't the streaming itself, which is legal if you own the footage and it's in public space, but that one of my cameras inadvertently caught part of a neighbor's window, and you could see inside their living room at certain times of day. That changed everything. Now it was a potential privacy violation. And the neighbor? He was pissed. Rightfully so. He thought I was spying on him. Even after I explained that it was just an automated stream I didn't know was public, he told the police he wanted to press charges. Civil, not criminal, but still. It got messy. I lawyered up. Guardy's customer service was non-existent. My attorney eventually found out the company was based in another country with no real corporate presence in the US, so there was basically no way to get them to take the stream down. We had to go the nuclear route. I shut down my entire home network and physically destroyed the cameras. I mean, I literally put them in a metal bucket and smashed them with a hammer in front of the police to prove I wasn't hiding anything else. After about 3 weeks of legal back and forth, including giving up logs, screenshots, and proof that I didn't monetize the streams or share them intentionally, the neighbor dropped the civil complaint in exchange for me paying part of his legal fees and a pretty hefty privacy restitution payment. Landlord let me stay, but only after I signed a contract saying I wouldn't install any cameras facing shared spaces again. And as a cherry on top, my streaming fame still haunts me. To this day, people occasionally recognize my building from the viral clips. I had a date ask if I was the guy from Alicam. One coworker at my fully remote job sent me a screenshot of someone slipping on ice and asked, "This your block?" So yeah. I tried to help the neighborhood stay safe. Instead, I accidentally became a minor internet sensation, hosted one of the weirdest true crime fan communities on the internet, got semi-sued, and learned that if an app has a smiley face next to a feature, it's probably hiding something evil. TIFU by pretending I could speak French on a first date and getting invited to her family's dinner, so I, 27M, matched with this girl, Elise, 25F, on Hinge about 2 weeks ago. She's stunning, smart, witty, the kind of person you immediately start overthinking texts with. We talked for a few days and found out we had a bunch of common interests: indie films, running, obscure jazz playlists, basic artsy dating app things. Then, as I'm scrolling through her photos for the 10th time like a love-struck raccoon, I noticed she had a little French flag emoji in her bio. I asked her about it and she told me she was half French and grew up speaking it with her mom. I've trying to impress her, said something like, "Oh, I love French, I'm actually pretty decent at it." This was a lie. I took French in high school, where my greatest achievement was getting kicked out of class for asking if le croissant was a masculine noun because of its firm curves. She seemed excited though and switched to French mid-text with a "c'est trop cool." On pourra parler un peu en français alors, smiley face, which Google Translate told me was something about us speaking a bit in French. I panicked and replied "oui, bien sûr," which exhausted about 40% of my actual knowledge. Fast forward to last Saturday, we decide to meet for brunch at this artsy place downtown. It's going really well. She's just as funny and smart in person, and I'm managing to keep up with the flirting without tripping over my own words. Then comes the moment. She says, "So I mentioned you to my mom," and she's so excited I'm dating someone who speaks French. She invited us to dinner next Friday. I laughed. She didn't. I realized too late she was serious. I had 2 choices: come clean and admit I lied, or double down and commit to a week-long crash course in survival-level French. Naturally, like any man drowning in serotonin and delusion, I chose the second option. That entire week became a montage of bad decisions. I downloaded Duolingo, watched French movies with subtitles off, and listened to French podcasts while I worked. I even tried shadowing, that technique where you mimic speech in real time. The result was me walking around the house repeating, "Je ne sais pas pourquoi le lapin est dans le jardin," like a malfunctioning robot. Friday arrives. I'm dressed nice, I brought flowers for her mom, and I'm nervously repeating bonsoir, enchanté under my breath like it's a spell that will protect me. Elise is glowing, holding my arm like I'm some sort of charming bilingual boyfriend. My stomach is flipping. Her parents live in a beautiful old house, the kind with vintage wallpaper and heavy furniture that smells like memory and imported wood. Her mom opens the door, exclaims something in rapid French, and pulls me into a double cheek kiss that I completely mess up and accidentally kiss her on the lips. Strike one. Then we sit down and Elise's dad pours everyone wine. Her mom starts asking me questions in French, very fast, very enthusiastic. I catch the words travail, work, and interessant, so I nod and say oui. Très intéressant. She laughs and asks something else. This is where things fully derail. She says what I now believe was tu es cek tu face dans la vie? What do you do for a living? And I, wanting to show off, respond with the first sentence I cobbled together from my Duolingo lessons, le cheval est dans la bibliothèque. Her mom freezes. Elise chokes on her wine. I panic. I think maybe I mispronounced something, so I double down. Oui, le cheval, dans la bibliothèque. C'est mon cheval. Elise is crying now, from laughter. Her dad is trying to suppress a laugh but failing. Her mom looks like she's just realized her daughter is dating a mental patient. Elise leans in and whispers, "Did you just tell my mom you have a horse in the library?" I try to recover. Non, travail avec les chevaux? Elise, you work with horses? I nod. Everyone is silent. Then her dad raises his glass and toasts, à la bibliothèque. They all burst out laughing and I just sit there, cheeks burning, praying for the ground to open beneath me. Dinner goes on with a lot more English, thank God. Her parents are super kind and clearly realize I am a lovable idiot, not an actual lunatic. Her mom even starts giving me tips on pronunciation, turning dinner into an impromptu French lesson. By the end of the night, Elise takes my hand and says, "Well, at least you committed." Which might be the nicest way someone's ever called me a liar. We're still seeing each other, surprisingly. Now she teases me by asking if my horse is doing well in the library, and I pretend to feed it invisible hay. I'm also actually learning French now, for real this time, because apparently, the bar is low, and all I have to do is not invent livestock scenarios mid-conversation. Hey, friends! If you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. So this happened last weekend, and I'm still not quite sure if I want to laugh, cry, or just pack up and move to another state. I, 27M, have been dating my girlfriend, Lena, 26F, for just over a year now. Things have been great. She's smart, funny, gorgeous, and I've seriously started considering long-term plans with her. But there's one small, furry hurdle that I haven't been able to clear, her cat, Mr. Pickles. Now, Mr. Pickles isn't your average cat. He's a 15-pound Maine Coon with the confidence of a lion and the soul of a petty criminal. He stares you down when you enter a room, slaps cups off tables while looking you directly in the eye, and once shredded my Vans because they were in his sun spot. Lena, naturally, adores him. He's just misunderstood, she says, every time he knocks over another plant. I've tried bonding with the beast, treats, laser pointers, even attempting to respect his personal space. Nothing. He tolerates me the same way you might tolerate an annoying coworker who eats your yogurt. So, with Lena's birthday coming up, I had a plan. I wanted to do something romantic, like next-level thoughtful. I'd seen a video online of this guy who took his girlfriend's favorite pet and turned it into a digital painting that made the animal look like a royal general in the Napoleonic Wars. The girlfriend cried happy tears. The internet applauded. It was perfect. And since Lena is obsessed with Mr. Pickles, I thought I'd do the same. I commissioned an artist. I paid extra for a rush job and Ultra HD canvas print. Mr. Pickles was decked out in a crimson military coat, golden epaulets, a tiny monocle on one glowing green eye, and even a sash that said Supreme Mioshmallow. It was glorious. I wrapped it up and planned a big dinner with candles, a home-cooked meal, the works. I even bought Mr. Pickles a gold-trimmed food bowl to match his new aristocratic persona. I was ready to win this cat over, once and for all. The evening starts off well. Lena's surprised and smiling when she sees the table set. I pull the painting out like I'm revealing a long-lost Picasso. She gasps. Her hand flies to her mouth. I'm feeling proud. Mr. Pickles jumps onto the couch, eyes locked on the painting like he knows something's up. Then Lena starts laughing. Not like a chuckle. Full-blown wheezing, tears coming out kind of laughter. You made him look like Napoleon, she cackles. This is amazing. He looks so stupid. The cat did not like that. I swear on my entire bloodline that Mr. Pickles understood he was being mocked. He narrows his eyes, turns his head to look directly at me, and lets out this low, guttural growl. Lena's still laughing, oblivious. I try to calm the situation with a bowl of gourmet wet food and my most soothing voice. Mr. Pickles, in response, does what I can only describe as a flying but slam off the counter straight into the painting. He crashes into it. The canvas falls face down. He bolts, leaving a trail of torn paper, claw marks, and one very noticeable dent where his face hit the frame. Lena gasps this time, for real. She picks up the painting and inspects it. It's salvageable, but it now has a few battle scars that give it an unfortunate realism. Dinner is delayed. I'm still trying to recover, standing there holding the remains of a roasted chicken I'd spent 4 hours cooking. That's when Mr. Pickles walks back in. He strolls up like nothing happened and vomits a hairball directly into the new gold-trimmed bowl. I'm stunned. Lena just mutters, "Oh, Pickles," like it's a sitcom catchphrase. I try to laugh it off. I pour wine. We sit. I serve the food. Things calm down, until Mr. Pickles decides he's not done yet. About halfway through dinner, Lena goes to the bathroom. Mr. Pickles takes this opportunity to hop into her chair. Cute, right? I think, maybe this is progress. So I do what any idiot who wants to impress their girlfriend does. I lean in and try to have a moment with her cat. I give him a piece of chicken from my fork. He sniffs it. Acceptable. He eats it. I smile. I reach out, slowly, and scratch behind his ears. He bites me. Hard. Not a little nip. A full "you have dishonored my image" bite to the webbing between my thumb and index finger. I yelp, jerk my hand away, and knock over my wine glass. It tips over the table, hits the edge, and explodes, onto Lena's white dress. She walks back in to see me bleeding, the table in chaos, Mr. Pickles licking his paw smugly, and her dress looking like I just sacrificed a goat on it. She freezes. I start stammering apologies. She looks from me to the cat to the painting, then back to me. And she starts laughing again. Like, really laughing. She laughs so hard she sits on the floor. She says it's the most on-brand birthday she could have imagined. We clean everything up. She actually loves the painting even more with the battle damage. Apparently, Mr. Pickles adding his mark made it feel more personal. I, however, spent the rest of the night with a band-aid on my hand, scrubbing red wine out of a rug while being watched like a war criminal by the cat I tried to impress. To summarize, I tried to win over my girlfriend's demon cat with a regal portrait, a fancy dinner, and peace offerings. He responded by mauling the art, biting me, and cursing my name in hairball form. We're still dating. Mr. Pickles still hates me. The painting now hangs in the hallway, crooked, and every time I walk past it, I swear his painted eyes are following me. This happened a few years ago, but I still wake up sometimes wondering how I let it get so out of control. Back then, I was burnt out. Work was frying my brain, my social life was non-existent, and my sleep was just me staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. questioning my life decisions. So, in a very cliché burnout move, I booked a spontaneous solo trip to a random chain of islands in the Pacific that I found on a subreddit about places that change your life. I figured I'd go off-grid, detox from my screen addiction, eat some fruit, maybe find myself or at least get a tan. The island I chose wasn't completely off the map, but it was remote enough that the resort I booked had no Wi-Fi and the only way there was a 2-hour boat ride from the mainland. I was pumped. When I arrived, it was everything I hoped: crystal blue water, a handful of overwater huts, and silence, a glorious, actual silence. For the first few days, I did nothing but swim, nap, and eat pineapples. On the third morning, I decided to venture inland. The resort concierge warned me not to go too far into the forest, not because it was dangerous, but because the terrain got tricky. But I had hiking boots and main character syndrome, so I ignored him. I figured if I followed the coastline, I couldn't get too lost. Wrong. So very wrong. I wandered off the path and got hopelessly turned around. My phone, which I brought purely as a camera, was already dead. By late afternoon, I realized I was lost. I decided to climb a ridge to get a better view, and that's when I spotted smoke, not fire smoke, but like a cooking fire. So I headed toward it, thinking I might stumble onto a village or something. And I did. I came through the trees and found a small, peaceful-looking community. Maybe 30 or 40 people, most of them older, some children running around, thatched huts, hand-dug gardens, the works. They didn't look surprised to see me. In fact, they froze like I'd dropped from the sky. I felt awkward and apologized in English, but no one answered. Just staring. I was dirty, sweaty, bleeding slightly from a thorn bush. One of them finally stepped forward, a man who looked like a grandpa you'd trust with your life, and touched my forehead gently, then dropped to his knees. Then everyone else did. I laughed. Like, full-on laughed because I thought I was being pranked. Then I realized they were chanting. A word I didn't know, repeated softly in rhythm: Tavare. 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 Still thinking it was a misunderstanding, I tried to explain I was just a lost tourist, pantomiming walking and oops and where is resort? They just kept chanting and looking at me like I was Moses with a day pass. Someone brought me a carved wooden seat and offered me a coconut. It was surreal. Later, the elder dude came into the hut they gave me, yes, they gave me a hut, and brought a few others. One of them spoke broken English, enough to tell me that Tavare meant returning one or he who returns. Apparently, some prophecy or oral legend in their community spoke of a visitor who would come from the sea, with skin marked by the light of the sky. I'm very pale, and I was sunburned to hell, wearing feet of the forest, my hiking boots, who would appear on the third day of the season storm. It had rained hard the night before. They believed I was the reincarnation of a spiritual guide who once lived among them generations ago and would return to bring balance. Now, any normal person would correct this. Politely decline, say sorry, I'm just a tourist, and try to find their way back. But here's where I messed up. I didn't. Maybe it was the way they looked at me like I mattered. Maybe I was high on adrenaline and dehydration. Or maybe I just wanted to not be the underpaid spreadsheet monkey I was back home. So I leaned in. I didn't say I was their Tavare. I just didn't say I wasn't. They fed me, taught me words, painted symbols on my arms in berry dyes. I sat in their gatherings, and they interpreted my silence as wisdom. I started throwing in random advice like spend more time listening than speaking or plant double crops before the red moon. Total fortune cookie stuff. They loved it. A week passed. Then 2. Every day I thought, okay, today I'll tell them the truth and leave. But I never did. I was addicted to the calm, the attention, the weird semi-god status. I helped build things, even taught the kids how to play hangman in the sand, which they somehow interpreted as a sacred game of fate. I ate roasted fish every night and slept better than I had in years. Then, a turning point. One morning, there was a commotion near the edge of the village. Two men from another nearby settlement had come to challenge the authenticity of the Tavare. Apparently, word had spread, and not everyone was buying it. They demanded I perform the Walk of Flame, a ceremonial tradition that I was very much not familiar with. The elder told me not to worry, that the Tavare would never be harmed, that the fire would not burn me. Spoiler, it absolutely would burn me. I tried to fake it. I pretended to meditate while secretly shoving damp mud into my sandals. I made a big show of stepping into the shallow ember pit, heart pounding. The moment my foot touched it, I yelped like a cartoon character. My cover was blown in half a second. People gasped, the elder looked heartbroken, and one of the little kids started crying. I confessed everything. Well, most of it. I left out how much I'd been enjoying the free food and fanfare. I told them I was a tourist, that I got lost, that I was just a person and not a returning spirit. Silence. Then, laughter. From the elder, he told me, in perfect, fluent English, that he knew from the start. I was stunned. He explained that the story of the Tavare was symbolic, passed down not to literally expect a reincarnation, but to keep people open to change, to new ideas, to outside influence in times of need. He said they used it as a kind of test. If the visitor turned out to be wise and kind, they let the story run its course. If the visitor proved greedy or cruel, they were asked to leave. They saw I meant no harm and just let me play along. I spent 3 more days there, properly this time, as myself. When I left, they gave me a handmade necklace carved from wood and coral. I still wear it sometimes when I feel like I'm losing myself again. So yeah. I got mistaken for a cult leader, leaned way too far into it, got called out by a barefoot elder with better English than me, and somehow came out of it spiritually adjusted and moderately less of an idiot. I also stepped on a sea urchin the next day on my way back to the resort, which felt fair. Moral of the story, don't lie to people, even if they offer you coconuts and god status. Also, never trust mud to protect you from hot coals. So this happened last week, and I'm still doing damage control. A little background, I live in a fairly quiet suburban neighborhood where everyone kind of knows each other, but not too well. We wave, occasionally exchange pleasantries, but for the most part, people keep to themselves. I, 34 work from home in tech, and I rent the bottom unit of a duplex. The upstairs is rented out to a nice but slightly paranoid older woman named Diane. Diane is in her 60s, retired, and very active in the neighborhood Facebook group. She's the kind of person who once reported a suspicious car that was just the UPS guy parked slightly crooked. Anyway, my girlfriend had a friend who was moving to another country and needed someone to take her 2 parrots for a few months. Being the overly helpful idiot I am, I said yes. These parrots, Mango and Pico, are beautiful, tropical, loud as all hell, and constantly bickering. I mean constantly. I didn't know birds could argue like an old married couple in a heated divorce. They scream at each other in both human words and bird gibberish, knock over their food bowls in protest, and occasionally just scream for what I can only describe as vibes. The parrots arrived at my house in 2 large cages, and I put them in my office because that room has the most natural light. The first sign that things were going off the rails was when Diane knocked on my door on day 3 of the bird takeover. She looked concerned, like genuinely troubled. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, peering past me into the house. "Yeah, everything's fine," I replied, confused. "I've just been hearing yelling. And screaming. Like, angry screaming. It's been going on for hours, every day." I laughed, probably too hard. "Oh. That's just the parrots. They're dramatic." Diane did not laugh. "Oh. Okay. Well, just checking." I figured that was the end of it. I even invited her in to see the birds, but she politely declined and left. A few more days passed. The parrots started getting more comfortable in their new environment, which meant more screaming. One of them started yelling, Stop it, repeatedly. I assume he picked that up from his previous owner yelling at him for chewing wires. The other responded with "I hate you," over and over again. This would escalate into pure chaos, flapping wings, aggressive screeches, and the sound of toys being hurled across the cage like prison shivs. Then things got really weird. Last Thursday, I was working in my office when I saw flashing lights outside. I assumed it was construction or maybe a broken water line. Then I heard heavy knocking at my front door. 2 uniformed police officers. 1 male, 1 female. Both looking very serious. "Sir, we've received a report of ongoing domestic disturbances at this address. We need to ask you a few questions." I blinked at them, utterly confused. "Disturbance? No, I live alone." You wait. Is this about the birds?" The officers looked at each other. The female officer said, "We got a report that there are unusual animal sounds, yelling, and what was described as high-pitched fighting." I invited them in. I showed them the parrots, who of course had decided this was the perfect time for a synchronized screaming match. Mango yelled "Help me," followed by Pico squawking "I'll kill you." The officers were visibly startled. I tried to explain the situation, that I was bird-sitting, that these parrots were just weird, that no actual murder was happening on the premises. They took some notes, looked around, and said they'd have to file a report just to be safe, but that I didn't seem to be doing anything illegal. They did, however, advise me to maybe keep the windows closed and to avoid any further confusion. So I thought that was the end of it. Oh, no. The next morning, I discovered that someone had anonymously posted in the neighborhood Facebook group warning about suspicious activity involving exotic animals and potential animal cruelty. The post described daily screaming matches and possible forced fighting. It ended with a cryptic, "If you see something, say something." The post included a blurry photo of the side of my house. My house. I was being accused of running an illegal parrot fight club. My phone started blowing up with texts from the few neighbors I knew, all versions of "Dude, what the hell is going on at your house?" One person offered to rescue the birds. Another person, who I have never even spoken to, left a passive-aggressive note on my porch that read, "There's a special place in hell for people who profit off animal suffering." So, I did what any rational person would do. I made a full post in the same neighborhood Facebook group, complete with photos of the parrots in their pastel-colored cages surrounded by enrichment toys, explaining that they were rescues temporarily in my care, that they were just loud, and that no animals were being harmed. Most people were understanding, but a few remained skeptical. Diane hasn't spoken to me since, and I caught her taking another photo of my house yesterday. I don't know if she's building a case or just documenting evidence, but either way, I'm probably on some kind of bird-related watch list now. I have 3 more weeks of this bird-sitting gig. 3 more weeks of living in a suburban true crime podcast. The worst part? I think the birds are enjoying the attention. TIFU by pretending to be Australian for an entire work contract and getting invited to an Aussie family reunion. This all started because I had a bit of an accent when I first joined my current job on a remote contract. I'm not Australian, I'm from Michigan. But I studied abroad in Sydney for 6 months during college and came back with a weird, half-baked accent that would pop up when I was nervous or had too much coffee. During the onboarding video call, I guess I must have been jittery and talking fast because my new team lead, Carla, immediately said, "Oh, you're Australian?" Instead of correcting her like a normal, sane person, my brain short-circuited and I said, "Yeah, from Melbourne," because I panicked and didn't want to seem weird. It was meant to be a one-off thing. I figured we'd get through the call, and I'd just drop the accent over time and chalk it up to Zoom audio quality or something. Wrong. Carla was thrilled. Apparently, her sister married an Aussie and she'd always wanted to visit. She asked me which footy team I supported, and I, having zero memory of the teams I half-heartedly watched in uni, said the Bulldogs, which I later Googled to confirm is, in fact, a real team. She called me Melbourne Mike, not my real name, in Slack for weeks. Everyone thought it was hilarious. I had unwittingly become the exotic, laid-back Aussie guy on the team. The problem was, I was not laid back. I'm a tightly wound ball of Midwest anxiety wrapped in social guilt. But once you're the Aussie guy, you start leaning into it. I started saying no worries a lot. I'd toss in a mate here and there. I studied the Bureau of Meteorology site to have believable weather opinions for small talk. I even faked a time zone by scheduling messages ahead of time and claiming I was up early or just heading out for dinner. My crowning lie? During a virtual happy hour, someone asked what I missed most about home. I said me mum's Anzac bickies, which I thought was both specific and obscure. Someone actually mailed me a package of them a week later, and I had to pretend I hadn't had one in years while eating it on camera. The contract was originally for 3 months. It got extended. Then extended again. I kept the act going for nearly a year. I was always remote, always calling in from Melbourne, and because of COVID and shifting policies, there were never any in-person meetings. Until last month. The company announced they were flying the whole team out for a long-overdue in-person retreat in Seattle. They were excited to finally meet me in person, and I, in a blinding act of hubris, agreed. I thought, I'll just fake the accent for a few days, smile, drink, be memorable, and head home. No worries. I practiced the accent for weeks. I watched Australian YouTubers, listened to hours of Triple J, even re-watched Kath and Kim. By the time I boarded the plane, I was nervous but ready. My voice was an ocean of oi-s and up inflections. The retreat started fine. I leaned into every Aussie stereotype I could without seeming cartoonish. I called the elevator a lift. I pretended to be confused by tipping. I made casual references to Vegemite and Huntsman spiders. People loved it. Then, Carla dropped the bomb. We were at the team dinner on the last night, a few drinks in, when she said, "You know, my sister lives just outside Melbourne. You have to come to our family reunion next month. It's in the Yarra Valley. You could even stay with them if you're around. They'd love to meet a fellow Aussie." I laughed it off at first, thinking it was a polite gesture. But Carla was serious. She texted me 2 days later with her sister's number and a picture of their house. Just reach out. They're excited. I spent 3 straight hours staring at the message. I was finally in too deep. I couldn't confess without unraveling a year of lies. So I did what any reasonable person would do, I ghosted Carla. I didn't respond to the message. I didn't show up to the next team meeting. I logged off everything. For 2 days, I went dark. Then I messaged HR, citing personal emergencies, and abruptly quit the contract. That would have been the end of it, except, this week, I got a message on LinkedIn. From Carla's sister. It turns out Carla had given her my name, again, not actually Mike, and she found me. Her message was cheerful. She said she hoped everything was okay, that they'd love to meet up if I was back in Melbourne. Except I'm in Ann Arbor. Surrounded by snow. Nowhere near a kangaroo. So now I'm spiraling, wondering if I've accidentally catfished an entire family across hemispheres. I've deleted LinkedIn, blocked Carla, and changed my Slack profile picture. I'm living in digital witness protection. And yet, somewhere deep inside me, a voice still whispers in an awful, exaggerated accent, "She'll be right, mate. She will not be right." I ruined a job, possibly traumatized a family, and for what? Anzac biscuits and a nickname in Slack. I've learned my lesson, never impersonate a nationality unless you're ready to meet their relatives. TIFU by trying to impress my girlfriend's dad with a homemade beer and accidentally drugging the entire neighborhood. So this happened about a week ago and I'm still getting side eyes from half the block. I, 27M, have been dating my girlfriend, Hannah, 26F, for about a year. She's wonderful, and her parents are cool too, especially her dad, Dave. Dave is a total beer snob. The man brews his own stuff, judges regional competitions, and has a fridge entirely dedicated to IPAs. I wanted to impress him. Big mistake. I've always wanted to try brewing my own beer, so I figured, why not now? I bought a homebrew kit online, watched way too many YouTube videos, and went full Breaking Bad in my kitchen. I decided to try something unique and earthy and thought it'd be cool to incorporate some local herbs I found during a hike the previous weekend. I found this little bush that smelled amazing, almost like citrus and mint had a baby. I grabbed a handful of the leaves and added them during the boiling stage of the brew. I googled them briefly, found something kind of similar, and figured it was probably fine. Spoiler, it was not fine. Fast forward a few weeks, the beer's fermented, bottled, and carbonated. I even made a stupid little label for it, Forest King Pale Ale. Hannah rolls her eyes, but Dave seems intrigued when I present it to him during a barbecue at her parents' place. The whole neighborhood's there. We're talking like 20 people, friends, neighbors, relatives. Dave cracks one open, takes a long sip, and raises an eyebrow. That's interesting, he says, which in beer language can mean anything from this is pond water to I can't feel my face. Everyone's curious, so he starts handing out bottles. People drink it. Some love it. Some just politely sip. Me? I'm floating, proud as hell that I might have actually pulled this off. Then things get weird. About 20 minutes in, people start acting off. First it's subtle. Someone giggles at a completely unfunny joke. Another guy stares at the trees like they're telling him secrets. One woman is just rubbing the grass and whispering it's so soft. Dave starts singing an Irish sea shanty while pouring beer on the grill to bless the fire. Hannah pulls me aside, eyes wide. What the hell did you put in that beer? I tell her about the herb I found. She makes me show her a picture. She disappears inside with her phone for a few minutes, then comes out looking like she's seen a ghost. That's wild dogga, she says. Now, I'd never heard of wild dogga before, but apparently it's also known as lion's tail and has mild psychoactive properties. Mild if you smoke a little. Less mild if you boil it and dump it into 5 gallons of beer. At this point, half the neighborhood is tripping. Someone is trying to climb a tree to be closer to the moon. A retired dentist is giving an impromptu TED talk about how colors have flavors. Dave is still singing sea shanties, but now he's crying. I think someone called a raccoon their spirit animal. Paramedics were called. Not by me, I was too busy trying to talk down a teenager who was convinced the barbecue grill was a portal to the astral plane. Thankfully no one was seriously hurt, but a few people needed fluids, and one guy had a panic attack because his shadow was following him too aggressively. The worst part? Since this was all during a neighborhood event hosted by Hannah's parents, everyone knew where the beer came from. A cop on scene, a neighbor, naturally, asked me if I was trying to recreate Burning Man in a cul-de-sac. Dave, for his part, was actually kind of impressed once he came down. Said it had a bold character. But Hannah's mom is still not speaking to me. Word spread fast. Our local next door exploded. Posts ranged from "Do we need a permit to serve hallucinogens now?" to "Anyone know where I can get more of that Forest King stuff?" I think I accidentally started a microbrew cult. To fix things, I went to every house, apologized in person, and brought store-bought craft beer as a peace offering. Most people were gracious. One elderly woman winked at me and said it was the most fun she's had since Woodstock. Another handed me back an empty bottle of my own brew and said 10 out of 10, would transcend again. Hannah? She's forgiven me, kind of. We've agreed that my brewing privileges are revoked indefinitely. Dave keeps joking that he's entering my beer into a local experimental brew contest. Honestly, he might win. So yeah. I tried to impress my girlfriend's dad with homemade beer and instead accidentally dosed the neighborhood. TIFU by accidentally taking edibles before meeting my girlfriend's ultra-conservative parents for the first time. So this happened a few months ago, and I still get flashbacks every time I see a casserole dish. I've been dating my girlfriend, Hannah, for about 8 months. She's sweet, smart, gorgeous, and completely out of my league. Her family, however, is the type of conservative that makes Fox News look like Burning Man. I'm talking Sunday service, no dancing under my roof kind of energy. Her dad was a colonel in the Air Force and her mom's a piano teacher who refers to Starbucks as too worldly. That kind of vibe. I'd known for a while that the day of meeting her family would come, and I had mentally prepared myself for it like I was about to do a TED Talk in a minefield. Hannah, bless her, gave me the rundown: don't swear, don't talk about politics, and for the love of all things holy, don't bring up your tattoo. It's a small one, nothing wild. Just a little alien head on my forearm that I got ironically during college. So anyway, the fateful Saturday rolls around. The plan was to drive to her parents' house, about an hour out of town, have a late lunch, then spend the afternoon there pretending I'm not a walking collection of liberal arts opinions and band t-shirts. Easy enough. Here's where I screwed up. The night before, I'd gone over to my buddy Caleb's place. He's a chill guy who bakes, like, literally bakes, and sometimes adds a little something something to his baked goods. That night, he offered me a harmless cookie. Just half, dude, he said. They're strong. I took it home with the intention of saving it for a lazy Sunday. But in the rush of morning prep, showering, shaving, rehearsing answers to potential questions about my 5-year plan, I grabbed the wrong cookie. I had 2 wrapped cookies in the fridge. One was a regular snickerdoodle from a coffee shop. The other was Caleb's nuclear edible disguised as a sugar cookie. Both were in clear wrap. I didn't think twice. I ate it on the drive over. I remember thinking it tasted earthy. Like a cookie that had spent too long in a humid basement. But my mind was elsewhere, focused on remembering Hannah's dad's name and whether or not her mom thought dinosaurs were real. About 25 minutes into the drive, it hits. Not a little "oh, I'm feeling mellow" hit. I mean a sledgehammer to the soul. My vision tunneled. My hands felt like they were 6 inches longer than usual. The car stereo was playing the Lumineers, but somehow it sounded like Gregorian chant remixed by Skrillex. I immediately pulled over. Hannah asked what was wrong, and I did what any self-respecting man would do in that situation. I lied. Just low blood sugar, I said, my pupils dilated like dinner plates. Didn't eat breakfast. She handed me a protein bar and we kept going. I was praying, like, full-on whispering to whatever divine force would listen, that the high would wear off by the time we got to her parents' driveway. It did not. We arrived. I stepped out of the car like a newborn giraffe learning to walk. Her parents came out to greet us. Her dad shook my hand with a grip like a vice. Her mom gave me a hug that felt like a slow-motion anxiety attack. I smiled. I thought I was smiling. According to Hannah later, I looked like I had just seen the face of God and it confused me. Then we went inside. The house smelled like potpourri and judgment. Every surface had a crucifix or a lighthouse on it. We sat in the living room and I focused all my energy on not moving or breathing too weird. Her dad asked, "So, what do you do for work?" Now, I do have a job. I work in marketing for a non-profit that supports clean water initiatives. But for some reason, in my THC-riddled brain, I thought the better move was to say, I'm in, like, ideas. Like advertising? He asked. I nodded slowly. Sort of. But, like, clean advertising. Ethical thoughts. Her mom offered me iced tea. I said, "Thank you, Mrs. Hannah," which is not her name. Lunch was even worse. It was some kind of casserole with little bits of tuna in it. I was so hyper-aware of chewing that every bite sounded like wet gravel in my skull. At one point, I became convinced the casserole was alive and trying to escape my fork. Hannah's mom said grace, and I bowed my head but forgot to close my eyes. I stared at the mashed potatoes the entire time, certain they were breathing. After grace, I tried to compliment the food. My brain selected the phrase, "This tastes like a memory," and I said it out loud. Her dad blinked. "A memory?" "Yeah," I continued, unable to stop. "Like something you'd eat during a dream about your grandma." I have never wanted to implode into a puddle of plasma more in my life. Hannah noticed something was off. She leaned over and whispered, "Are you okay?" I tried to whisper back, but forgot how volume worked. So I said, at full volume, "I ate the wrong cookie." The table went silent. Her mom said, "Excuse me?" And I, a complete idiot, clarified, "I think I'm on drugs." Her dad stood up. Hannah whispered Jesus Christ, and I laughed, because that name was everywhere in the house. Her mom started asking if I needed water or a priest. I honestly couldn't tell. We left shortly after that. Hannah drove. The entire car ride back was just her saying, "Oh my God," over and over while I stared out the window trying to remember if birds were real. It took a full week for Hannah to forgive me. Her parents think I'm a troubled soul, and I don't think I'll be invited back for Thanksgiving, or any other day that ends in Y. Moral of the story, always label your cookies. It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday afternoon. I had plans to relax, catch up on some much-needed sleep, and maybe finish a book I had been trying to get through for weeks. But as with most of my life, things rarely go as planned, and what started as a peaceful day ended up with me in the hospital and my dignity in shambles. It all began with a simple trip to the local grocery store, which I'd convinced myself was necessary for the sake of dinner that night. I had the whole evening planned. A home-cooked meal, a cozy blanket, and binge-watching my favorite series. The perfect, no-drama Saturday. Little did I know that a bag of flour would be the catalyst for my downfall. I grabbed my reusable shopping bag and made my way to the store. It wasn't a huge chain or anything fancy, just a regular neighborhood grocery store. The kind of place where you can usually find half-empty shelves and questionable produce, but it's close enough that you don't care. I grabbed a cart and started my journey through the aisles. I needed a few basic items, pasta, some fresh vegetables, and flour for the homemade pizza dough I had planned to make later. Flour. The most innocent thing in the world. Or at least, that's what I thought. I found the flour aisle, which was practically empty, save for a single bag of the stuff on the top shelf. Now, I'm not the tallest guy in the world, but I'm not exactly short either. I'm around 5 feet 9 inches, so reaching things on high shelves is usually no problem. But on this particular day, I felt the overwhelming need to prove something to myself. It was as if the universe had whispered to me, "You can do this. You are capable of reaching that bag without any help." So, I decided to stretch. I leaned into the cart and stretched my arm up, trying to balance myself on my toes. At first, I felt confident, like, really confident. I even gave myself a little mental high five. But as I reached farther and farther, my foot slipped on the smooth floor, and suddenly, the weight of my body was pushing me farther forward than I could recover from. In that split second, I realized that I wasn't going to be able to stop myself from falling. The next thing I knew, I was on the ground. Not in some graceful, controlled fall, mind you, but in a full-on disaster. I managed to crash into the shelf of flour bags, sending an avalanche of them tumbling down onto me like I was trapped in some twisted, white powdery nightmare. In a flash, the floor around me was covered in a fine layer of flour, and I could feel the cold, dusty weight settling on every inch of my body. I lay there for a moment in disbelief. My hand was still gripping the now emptied shelf, and I couldn't understand what had just happened. It took me a few seconds to realize that I was sprawled out on the floor of a crowded grocery store, covered in flour, with no idea how to salvage any part of this situation. But I wasn't alone for long. A couple of customers rushed to my side, and the first thing they said was, "Are you okay?" Now, logically, I knew I should have said yes, smiled, and gotten up. But no. Instead, my brain malfunctioned. I wasn't sure if I was embarrassed or in pain, but what came out of my mouth wasn't the simple "I'm fine" I should have uttered. Instead, I blurted, "I didn't think this would happen." And they just stared at me. I tried to get up, but my legs were tangled in a mass of flour bags that had scattered in every direction. I kicked them away one by one, feeling the absurdity of the situation setting in. "This is fine," I muttered, a little too loudly, hoping to ease the awkwardness. I was wrong. It only made the whole thing worse. Should we call someone?" the older lady asked. Her voice trembled just enough to let me know she was unsure whether she should be concerned or just laugh. But the truth was, I was more embarrassed by the situation than injured. Nothing was broken, but my dignity was now in multiple pieces scattered around the aisle with all the flour. I finally managed to get to my feet, dusted myself off, and surveyed the mess I'd made. The floor was covered in flour. There were bags all over the place, and a few had broken open, spilling their contents onto the shelves and other customers' carts. I looked around the store and noticed that the chaos I'd created was now drawing the attention of nearly every single person there. And then, of course, someone had to laugh. A loud, unmistakable laugh rang out from the other side of the aisle. It was a man in his mid-30s, and he had clearly witnessed my entire fall from grace. He laughed so hard that he doubled over, clutching his stomach. "I think you broke the flour aisle," he managed to choke out between fits of laughter. I wanted to disappear at that moment, but I did the only thing I could think of. I tried to laugh too. It came out more like a nervous giggle, but it was enough to acknowledge the ridiculousness of the whole situation. At this point, an employee came over, clearly in a bit of a panic, as he saw the flour disaster unfold in front of him. "Is everything okay?" he asked, eyeing the destruction. I wanted to make a joke or somehow explain that this wasn't how I intended to spend my Saturday, but instead, I just said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just, making a mess." The employee gave me a puzzled look but quickly got to work on cleaning up. A few other staff members came over with brooms and dustpans to gather the flour, while I stood awkwardly in the middle of it all. Eventually, the store staff managed to get everything cleaned up, but the damage to my ego was already done. The man who had laughed at me continued to glance over at me as he went down the aisle with his groceries, still chuckling to himself. I wanted to leave right away. I couldn't bear the thought of staying in that store for another second. So, I grabbed the only item I had left in my cart, some pasta, and shuffled to the checkout. As I stood in line, I caught the cashier eyeing me suspiciously. I must have looked like a walking flour explosion, my shirt and pants still covered in the stuff. When I finally paid for the pasta, the cashier, who had clearly seen it all, gave me a sympathetic smile. "Happens to the best of us," she said. As I walked out of the store, I realized that not only had my peaceful Saturday been ruined, but I had also made a public spectacle of myself in front of half the store. I never even got my flour, but at least I left with a story. Later that evening, I sat down to my pizza dough disaster. I had to use store-bought dough because I was too embarrassed to attempt making it again, and tried to salvage the rest of my day. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I would forever be remembered as the guy who fell into the flour aisle. So, yeah. Don't try to impress yourself in a grocery store. It's not worth it. TIFU by going on a date with a girl I barely knew and accidentally setting her house on fire. So, this happened about a month ago, and I still can't believe how things turned out. I've been thinking about posting this for a while, but I figured maybe someone out there will relate to just how badly things can go wrong in the most mundane situations. Let me give you some context. I met Sarah on a dating app. She seemed cool, and after a few conversations, we decided to meet up in person. We had a pretty basic first date, dinner at a nice restaurant, a few drinks, some light conversation. Nothing crazy, just getting to know each other. I thought it went well, and so did she, apparently. We had a pretty good chat about our interests, hobbies, and where we grew up, and she even mentioned that she was a pretty good cook. Now, I don't know about you, but I love food. I don't care what it is, I'm game. So when she suggested that we could grab some drinks and head over to her place for a nightcap, I was all in. She was living in a townhouse not far from where we had dinner, so it was convenient, and I figured a quiet night might be nice after a long day. We got to her place, and things started off pretty chill. She offered me a drink, and we made our way into her kitchen where she was going to mix something special for us. She had a really cozy place, and honestly, it felt like she had everything together. She told me she was working on some new recipe ideas, and I was genuinely interested, so I asked if I could help her with anything. She grinned and said, "Actually, I was thinking of doing a little experiment in the kitchen. I've been trying to perfect this candle-making thing, and it could be fun to do it together." I was slightly confused but mostly intrigued. Who doesn't want to try making their own candles? It seemed like one of those quirky, cute date ideas. So, she led me to the back of her kitchen, where she had a small setup, wax, wicks, scents, all the usual candle-making stuff. She was really into it, talking about how therapeutic it was for her and how she was hoping to sell her candles online one day. Now, here's where things started to get a little weird. She pulled out what looked like a small double boiler and set it up on the stove. She explained that we needed to melt the wax first and then pour it into the molds. Fine, no problem. But here's the thing, I'm not exactly the most kitchen-savvy person. I know how to microwave some frozen food and maybe make a sandwich, but when it comes to anything more complicated, I'm lost. She handed me a smaller pot and asked me to pour some wax into it so I could start melting it while she prepared some scents. I was a little nervous, but I didn't want to look like an idiot, so I tried to act casual. I set the pot on the stove and turned on the burner, like I'd seen people do on TV. In retrospect, I should have paid more attention to what I was doing. But hey, she seemed like she knew what she was doing, right? A few minutes later, I realized I had made a mistake. The wax was starting to smell wrong. It wasn't the pleasant, sweet fragrance I was expecting, but something burnt and rancid. Sarah was still busy in her corner, preparing the scents, so I thought, maybe it's just part of the process. I kept stirring, hoping it would go away. But the smell got worse, and that's when I noticed something. Smoke was rising from the pot. I froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. Was this supposed to happen? I thought maybe the wax was just getting a little too hot, but I didn't want to freak out and ruin everything. I quickly grabbed the handle of the pot, ready to take it off the burner. That's when the situation went from bad to catastrophic. In my panic, I knocked over a small bottle of scented oil she had left on the counter, and it spilled directly onto the burner. The moment it hit, there was an immediate burst of flames. I swear to God, I saw the fire leap up like something out of a horror movie. The fire quickly spread to the nearby towels, and before I knew it, the entire stovetop was engulfed. Sarah, hearing the chaos from the other side of the room, rushed in to see what was happening. Her eyes went wide when she saw the fire. "Oh my God! What are you doing?" I, in full panic mode, tried to grab the nearest thing, which happened to be a kitchen towel, and started waving it at the fire, as if that would somehow put it out. Obviously, this only made things worse, and now the towel was on fire too. At this point, we're both freaking out. She yells at me to grab the fire extinguisher, and I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off, trying to figure out where the hell she keeps the damn thing. I finally find it in a cabinet under the sink and, in the process, knock over a few more items, adding to the chaos. I grab the extinguisher, pull the pin, and start spraying foam everywhere, but it's not doing enough to put out the flames. The fire is still raging, now climbing up the kitchen cabinets. In a desperate move, Sarah grabs her phone and calls 911. The operator assures her that help is on the way, but in the meantime, we're left standing in the middle of a blazing kitchen, unsure of what to do. The flames seem to have a mind of their own, and the smoke is so thick that I can barely see. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the fire department arrives. They're in and out of the house in what seems like a flash. They manage to get the fire under control, but not before it does some serious damage. The kitchen is completely wrecked. The walls are scorched, the cabinets are a mess, and I can't even begin to describe the smell. Sarah, who had been calm until that point, just sat down on the couch, staring at the destruction. She was in shock. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there, covered in foam, feeling like the world's biggest idiot. The fire department tells us we're lucky the fire didn't spread further and that we acted fast enough to keep it contained. But honestly, it didn't feel like luck. It felt like the most absurd accident in the history of dating. Sarah was surprisingly chill about it afterward, saying that it wasn't entirely my fault. But I could tell she was upset. She kept making jokes like, well, at least the date will be memorable, but I could tell she was mortified. We ended up sitting in the living room while waiting for her insurance to kick in. I kept apologizing over and over, but she just shook her head. We didn't see each other after that night. She texted me a few days later to say that she didn't think we should continue seeing each other, and honestly, I can't blame her. I mean, who wants to date someone who burns down their kitchen on a first date? So yeah, I guess that's the story of how I set a girl's house on fire within a few hours of meeting her. And I'm still single, which, in hindsight, is probably for the best. Don't try to make candles on your first date, folks. Just don't. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.